Everything has its price. I thought I could control everything, that love was just a weak emotion. But sometimes the price for a fake marriage is your very soul when you realize you've lost the most precious thing without even knowing it. I stood before the mirror, my black tuxedo hugging my body, a silk tie knotted at my neck. I looked at myself, a successful man full of pride. Today I would officially hold the key to the colossal empire of the Reed family fortune. There was only one condition: I had to get married. And I had found a perfect wife, a pawn in my grand chess game, Elara Vance. She was walking slowly down the flower-strewn aisle, her pristine white wedding dress making her look like an angel. But I knew her eyes were empty, devoid of emotion. I am Ethan Reed, the sole grandson of Elias Reed, heir to a billion-dollar empire. And today I would marry a woman I had never loved, never truly known, and who would never truly belong to me. My life, though wrapped in silk and luxury, had never truly been my own. From birth, I was a pawn in the power game of Mr. Elias Reed, my grandfather, a cold, unyielding man who believed that everything in the world could be bought with money, including loyalty and happiness. He wanted me to be the most worthy heir, a cold-blooded, rational individual, never swayed by emotion. Every choice I made, from my schools to my career to my friends, had to pass his scrutiny. My grandfather imposed a strict training regimen. From a young age, I had to learn to analyze complex financial reports instead of playing, attend board meetings as a teenager, and was taught that emotions were a deadly weakness. I once tried to resist. When I was 18, I wanted to pursue art, a passion for photography. My grandfather bluntly stripped me of all financial benefits, froze my bank accounts, and threatened to disown me if I didn't return to the path he had laid out. I had to abandon my passion, bury my dreams to become a ruthless businessman, throwing myself into tech projects, acquiring companies, turning them into colossal money-making machines, all just to please him, to prove I was worthy of what he considered the legacy. I craved freedom, longed to escape his colossal shadow, but I knew that to do so, I had to have power to hold this fortune in my hands. And then when I reached the threshold of inheriting the entire family fortune, my grandfather dealt a fatal blow. "Ethan," he said in his gloomy study, where the scent of cigar smoke and old leather always haunted the space, "to prove your maturity and stability, you must marry. And that marriage must last at least 3 years. Otherwise, the entire fortune will be transferred to charitable foundations. I want to see a man with a family, with responsibility, not a free, reckless individual. I want an heir who can sustain this legacy for generations." I tried every way to escape this stranglehold. I offered countless reasons, countless alternatives, but it was useless. He was resolute. Finally, I accepted, but on my own terms, a contract marriage, without love, without ties. I wanted a wife on paper, someone unattached, undemanding of affection, and smart enough to understand the rules of the game, not to cause me trouble. I enlisted the family's private lawyer, Victoria Sterling, a sharp, middle-aged woman with keen eyes who always knew how to resolve matters discreetly, to find a suitable candidate. She presented me with a short list. The name Elara Vance immediately caught my attention. She was a talented young scientist renowned for her groundbreaking research on a synthetic vaccine, but facing a double tragedy. Her parents, both brilliant scientists, had died in a devastating accident a few years prior, leaving her with an enormous debt from their unfinished research projects. More importantly, her medical records showed she suffered from a rare genetic disease, adult-onset Lee-Sau syndrome. The disease was predicted to manifest strongly when she turned 28, causing severe immune deficiency, and without special therapy, would claim her life within a few years. The cost of treatment was unimaginable, and she had no way to earn enough money. Elara's circumstances made her the perfect prey for my arrangement. Our first meeting took place at a secluded coffee shop under Victoria's cold supervision. I looked at her, her deep dark eyes reflecting despair but also fierce pride. She didn't beg, didn't show weakness. She sat upright, her gaze steady. "I don't love you, Elara," I stated directly, my voice deep but devoid of emotion. "And you don't need to love me. This is a transaction. We will play our parts perfectly in front of my grandfather and the public. Your duty is to be an exemplary wife, and I will be a considerate husband. After 3 years we divorce, you get the money for your treatment, I get my inheritance. Everything clear. You get to live and I get my freedom." Elara looked at me, her thin lips curving slightly. "I understand, Ethan. I won't disappoint you. As long as you don't disappoint me either. Remember, I need that money to survive. I will do everything to get it as long as you keep your promise." Her voice was cold and decisive, without a hint of expression. The wedding took place 3 months later, extravagantly and ridiculously luxurious, witnessed by hundreds of high-profile guests from the elite circles. Camera flashes went off continuously. Photos of our fake kiss on magazine covers turned us into the golden couple of the year. Fairy tale marriage of young tycoon and scientific genius. that's what they called us. Only Elara and I knew the truth. Behind the closed doors of the opulent mansion in suburban Boston, we were two strangers living under one roof, each with our own life, each with our own secret. The first few days were a true test for both of us. The vast mansion became a giant theater where we were the lead actors in the play of The Perfect Marriage. We lived in terrifying isolation, each in our own wing, each living our own life. We had awkward family dinners where we had to act perfectly in front of the butler and a few maids. We learned to lie, learned to read each other's minds, to respond to unexpected questions from family, fake friends, and the media. Every gesture, every glance was calculated. I was a master actor. I pretended to be a considerate husband, taking her to parties, buying her expensive gifts, and constantly uttering empty words of love in front of everyone. Elara was the same. She played the role of a gentle, intelligent wife, always supportive of me, smiling fake smiles at people she didn't care about at all. Yet sometimes ordinary moments would break down our defenses. I often saw her working late in her private lab within the mansion, the lights shining brightly until dawn. I knew she was frantically pursuing her vaccine project as if it were her only lifeline. Occasionally, I heard her cough in the night or saw her trying to hide trembling hands when holding a glass of water in the morning. I was indifferent. That was her problem. I had secured her treatment costs. That was all I had to do. I told myself I had no other responsibility beyond the contract. Once, when we were at a major family charity event, a beautiful young girl with shimmering blonde hair approached me. She was Serafina Dubois, daughter of Count Dubois, a major business partner of the Reed family. Serafina had expressed feelings for me before, but I had always rejected her because I didn't want any relationship to complicate my plans. Serafina's gaze still clearly showed admiration and affection for me. When I introduced Elara as my wife, Serafina was visibly surprised and disappointed. That night when we got home, Elara unexpectedly asked me about Serafina. Who was she? Elara asked, her tone seemingly aloof, but I sensed a considerable curiosity. That's none of your business, I coldly replied, my gaze sweeping over her like a stranger. Your job is to play the role of a wife, not a curious person or a lover. Elara was silent. I saw something flash in her eyes, perhaps hurt, or maybe just disappointment at my answer. I dismissed the thought. I didn't want to think too much about Elara. Emotions would only complicate everything. 3 years passed quickly like a blink, but each day was a silent torment for me, living within this perfect facade. Elara spent most of her time in her private lab in the mansion, engrossed in her vaccine research. I too threw myself into tech projects, acquiring startups to prove my capabilities to my grandfather. We were two parallel ships, never truly touching, though anchored in the same port. However, the signs of Elara's illness became increasingly clear, no matter how hard she tried to hide them. I occasionally saw her cough violently, unable to suppress it, and had to use a handkerchief to cover her mouth. She often leaned on the stair railing or tried to hide trembling hands when holding a glass of water in the morning. Once I accidentally overheard her talking on the phone with a doctor, her voice full of worry about new symptoms, the progression of the disease, and the side effects of the medication she was taking to maintain herself. She mentioned not much time left. I was indifferent. That was her problem. I had secured her treatment costs. That was all I had to do. I told myself I had no other responsibility beyond the contract. I told myself that her illness would not affect me. I always maintained a certain distance, an invisible wall between us. I didn't want any emotions to interfere with this contract, didn't want to be tied down by someone else's weakness or illness. The 3-year mark was approaching. Only 1 more month until the contract was complete. I was ready for the next step. I had gathered enough evidence of our incompatibility to present to court. Carefully orchestrated small arguments, times we didn't appear together at social events, without valid reasons, secret meetings with my lawyer to discuss the divorce. I was ready to receive the enormous inheritance and, more importantly, to be free from this fake marriage. I had envisioned a new life free from my grandfather's scrutiny, free from roles, free from unspoken burdens. But then something unexpected happened, a cruel twist from my own grandfather. He Mr. Elias Reed, the family patriarch. A powerful and cunning man abruptly announced a change in his will. He called an urgent family meeting, a meeting I knew would change everything. Elara and I sat opposite each other in the mansion's grand living room, where Mr. Elias maintained his cold, imposing demeanor. The atmosphere was suffocating. I tried to keep a calm expression, but inwardly I was filled with anxiety. I have decided, Mr. Elias said, his voice echoing in the large room like a verdict being pronounced. Ethan's inheritance clause will be changed. To prove true leadership and stability, Ethan and Elara must remain married for at least 2 more years. If divorced within the next 2 years for any reason, Ethan will lose his inheritance completely and the entire fortune will be transferred to a charitable foundation. The new will also contains a clause if Elara voluntarily seeks a divorce or is found to be at fault in the marriage, such as infidelity, damaging the family's reputation, she will not receive a single cent. This twist struck me like a lightning bolt. 2 more years. Those were 2 years I had no intention of wasting my life in a meaningless charade. My plan was completely ruined. I looked at Elara. Her eyes also filled with shock and anger. Her face was pale, her lips trembling uncontrollably. "No way!" I roared, standing up abruptly, unable to maintain my composure. "You can't do that, you promised." Mr. Elias Reed smirked, a look of satisfaction appearing on his aged face. "I can and I have, unless you have a truly compelling reason to divorce that is not due to your subjective will. An objective reason beyond the control of both parties." My grandfather looked straight at me, his eyes sharp as knives. "I know about your contract, Ethan. Don't pretend anymore. I had you both followed from the beginning. This marriage is based on nothing but money and personal gain. I want to see a man capable of sacrifice, capable of true love, not someone who only calculates. I want to know if you are willing to give up everything to protect another person or just to keep the fortune." This shock was even greater than the twist about extending the marriage. My grandfather knew everything. He had tricked me, played cat and mouse with his own grandson. Our entire charade had been seen through by him long ago. He hadn't just wanted a stable marriage. He also wanted to test if I was capable of love, capable of giving up everything for someone else, a lesson he himself had perhaps never learned. I looked at Elara. She still didn't know that my grandfather had discovered our marriage contract. After the amended will was announced in that moment, I saw a cold, determined spark in her eyes, a crazy thought I couldn't read. She was calculating something I couldn't foresee. I didn't know what she would do. I only knew that our plan had crumbled and a new danger was lurking. After the family meeting, the tension between Elara and me escalated to an extreme. She no longer maintained her calm exterior. Elara began to act strangely unpredictably, like a completely different person. I noticed her strange actions. She started intentionally creating infidelity evidence. She began to leave early and come home late, claiming it was for late-night research sessions at an outside lab. But in reality, she was going to deserted bars, taking blurry photos with strange men she hired. I found out later. She deliberately left the scent of men's cologne on her coat or flirty messages on her phone that I accidentally saw on the breakfast table. She even set up mysterious calls saying ambiguous things for me to overhear. I tried to control myself, but each time my anger and suspicion flared up. I thought she wanted to ruin this marriage so she could be free, even if she would get nothing from the original agreement. This was illogical. Money and treatment were all she needed to survive. Could it be that she had found someone else who could help her escape this situation? A sense of unease rose within me, not jealousy, but incomprehension and indignation at her stupid actions. "Elara," I said coldly one evening as she returned home with a wrinkled shirt and tired eyes under the dim light of the living room, "what are you doing? Do you want to ruin everything? You know very well that if you're at fault, you'll get nothing and your life too." She looked at me, her eyes empty and icy, without a hint of fear. "I'm doing what I need to do, Ethan. You don't need to understand. You just need to play your part. Be the one who was betrayed." I was furious. I was too tired of her mysteries and games. I had already endured pressure from my grandfather, from the media, and now she was causing more trouble. "Fine, Elara. If you want a divorce so badly, if you want to ruin your image so badly, then I'll divorce. I don't need this damned fortune if it keeps me tied to a crazy woman like you, a woman who's killing herself." I roared, my voice full of anger and hurt. I had intended to say these words to challenge her, to see if she dared to let go of everything, but Elara just looked at me, her eyes suddenly gleaming with a strange light. "Good," she said, her voice surprisingly shaky, as if she had just completed an incredibly difficult task. "If that's what you want, then let's divorce. But don't tell your grandfather. Make him believe that you betrayed me. Let him believe that you broke your promise and I am the wronged party. Only then can I have a chance to survive." I was stunned. What, she wanted me to be the betrayer? She wanted me to lose my inheritance. This was absurd. I didn't understand. Her entire plan, from the fake photos to the messages, seemed designed to make me hate her and actively seek a divorce, but why would she want me to suffer and lose everything? I looked at her, my eyes full of suspicion. I had missed many signals. The awkwardness in the photos, the fleeting pain in her eyes whenever she said something cruel, and her strange demeanor when I got angry. Something wasn't right. A mysterious web was being spun, and I was in the middle of it. In another moment, I accidentally discovered a meticulously hidden medical file in Elara's desk drawer. It wasn't just the information about Lee syndrome that I already knew. The file included detailed reports on the rapid progression of the disease, terrifying prognoses from various doctors, and especially research on a unique experimental gene therapy that could slow or reverse the disease process. The cost of this therapy was astronomical, and it could only be performed at a specialized clinic in Switzerland with funding from an extremely large financial source. I recalled Mr. Elias's words, "If Elara voluntarily seeks a divorce or is found to be at fault in the marriage, she will not receive a single cent and all her treatment costs will be cut off." This meant that if she cheated and I was the one who initiated the divorce, she would receive no funding from the family and she would die. So why would she intentionally do that? Unless Elara wanted me to be at fault and I would have to accept losing my inheritance so she could still receive the funding in another way, but I couldn't imagine how. Or was she trying to push me into a situation where I was forced to divorce without losing her chance at treatment? I began to feel afraid. Elara was not crazy. She was playing a much bigger game, a game related to her survival. I had been blind. I couldn't let Elara carry out this insane plan. Even though we had a fake marriage, I wasn't a coward to blame her without understanding the reason. And more importantly, I felt something deeper was going on, a horrifying secret. I started to investigate Elara more thoroughly myself. I hired a private detective, Daniel Thorne, an experienced former CIA agent, to track her every move. Initially, Daniel only reported on Elara's fake infidelity. Meetings with hired men subtly created false evidence. But as he dug deeper, Daniel discovered irregularities. Those men were not lovers but hired actors, and Elara regularly sent them money. Daniel also discovered that Elara frequently visited a strange location at night, an old building with no sign. It was a private clinic where she met with a reputable neurologist. These appointments were not on the treatment schedule she had reported to me or to Victoria. This made me even more curious. I searched Elara's office more thoroughly looking for any clues. I found an old handwritten diary. Page by page, it contained entries about her pain, about the disease gnawing at her life, about her parents' deaths, and about the despair of not being able to find money for treatment. I read every sentence, every word as if reliving her life. How lonely she had been, how fiercely she had fought. And then I found the last lines written just days before she signed the contract with me. "I must live, at all costs. I cannot give up my parents' work. I will do anything, even if I have to sell my soul." I went to lawyer Victoria Sterling once more, demanding that she tell me the whole truth she had hidden. Victoria, with a serious expression, finally revealed everything. "Elara's illness, Lee syndrome," Victoria said, her voice lowering. "It's progressing faster than initially expected. Doctors believe she only has a few months left if not treated promptly. And the only therapy that can save her is a breakthrough gene therapy in Switzerland. It's incredibly expensive and the condition for participation is funding from a large research foundation. The Reed family was her only option, but with the condition that you marry and maintain the marriage." I knew that, but what I didn't know was, why did she do those things? The photos, the fake infidelity messages. She knew if she was at fault, she would lose everything. Victoria sighed. "Mr. Elias Reed didn't just change your will. He added a secret clause that only he and I knew, and I was forced to keep quiet. If Elara voluntarily seeks a divorce or is found to be at fault in the marriage, infidelity damaging the family's reputation, she will not receive any funding from the family and all her treatment costs will be cut off. She will die. The only way for her to get treatment is for you to be the one to actively request a divorce, and the reason for divorce must be your infidelity or that you caused serious mistakes unrelated to her. Elara deliberately made herself out to be a betrayer, accepting your hatred, accepting a bad reputation so that you would have a legitimate reason to push her away, so that your grandfather would believe you were at fault, and so she could still receive the funding for her treatment. She did all of this to protect you from losing your inheritance and at the same time create her only path to survival. This twist hit me like a thunderbolt. The entire story was turned upside down. Elara wasn't a betrayer. She was a woman sacrificing everything, including her honor, her feelings, and even her own safety, so that I could actively divorce her and she could have a chance to live. She had accepted my hatred, my contempt, just to ensure I wouldn't lose my inheritance, and more importantly, so that she could still live. I had been too blind by my own selfishness and plans. I had treated her like a number, a tool, while she was sacrificing herself to protect me in the cruelest way possible. I had been a jerk, an arrogant man who only thought of himself. "Where is she?" I asked, my voice trembling, overwhelming guilt and regret surging within me. "She's preparing everything to go to Switzerland," Victoria replied, her eyes filled with compassion. "She planned it all, pretending she was running away from this marriage. She wanted you to believe she wanted to take advantage of you so you wouldn't feel guilty when you broke up. I rushed out of the lawyer's office. I had to find Elara. I had to stop her. I had to tell her I knew the truth. I confronted Mr. Elias Reed, a no-holds-barred confrontation. I burst into his study, my face full of anger and tears. "What have you done, grandfather? You pushed Elara to her death," I roared, throwing Elara's medical file onto his desk. "You set a trap for her, forcing her to destroy herself so I wouldn't lose the fortune. She's dying and you're using that as a game." My grandfather. For the first time, I saw him stunned. His cold face momentarily showed a flicker of shock, then turned to anger. "I was just testing your loyalty, Ethan. What have you done? You've ruined everything." "You ruined everything," I retorted. "I turned marriage into a transaction, and now you want to turn life into a game. You don't understand. Elara isn't a pawn, she's a human being, and she's dying every day to protect me. Do you know what she's had to endure? She gave up her honor, turned herself into a betrayer in your eyes, just so I wouldn't lose this damned fortune." I told him everything I had discovered, every detail of Elara's silent sacrifice. I made it clear that I would never let go of Elara, even if I lost all my inheritance. I would fight for her even if it meant going against all his wishes. "If you want me to be a betrayer, fine, I'll betray your deal, but I won't betray my wife." My grandfather was silent, his eyes looking at me with incomprehension. For the first time in his life, I saw him no longer arrogant, no longer holding everything in the palm of his hand. Perhaps for the first time in his life, he saw a kind of love that money couldn't buy, a kind of love he had never possessed. Finally, after a long silence, he sighed. I misjudged you, Ethan. And Elara too. I didn't expect the girl to be so willing to sacrifice." His voice was hoarse, a rare occurrence. "All right, take her. I'll arrange everything. The treatment costs will be fully covered by the family. But you must remember, Ethan, you have made your choice. You will no longer be the official heir of the Reed family." I nodded. That was a price I was willing to pay. I found Elara at the airport. She was checking in for her flight to Switzerland. She looked thin, pale, but her eyes were still resolute. I didn't know when, but my feelings for this woman had grown larger than the contract, larger than the fortune. I didn't want to lose her. During those years of acting with me, Elara had unknowingly found warmth in this seemingly cold life. She had witnessed me throwing myself into work, my dedication to ascendant tech, and sometimes even the moments I secretly watched her when she was engrossed in her research. She realized that behind my cold exterior was a responsible man, and she had fallen in love with me. When my grandfather changed his will, she knew that the only way to protect me, so I wouldn't lose everything I had built, was to turn herself into a betrayer. She had accepted leaving, carrying a bad reputation, and my misunderstanding, as long as I was safe and didn't have to face my grandfather's anger. The pain of leaving me was even greater than the fear of death lurking. "Elara, stop!" She turned around, her eyes wide, full of surprise and fear. "Ethan, what are you doing here? You shouldn't be here. Leave me alone. I don't want to implicate you anymore." I grabbed her hand, feeling the coldness and trembling from her fingers. "I know everything, Elara. I know everything. I know about your illness, about my grandfather's claws. I know you sacrificed everything for me. I'm sorry. I'm sorry for not trusting you, for misunderstanding you. I was too blind, too selfish." My tears streamed down. Elara looked at me, her eyes shifting from surprise to shock, then to tears. She tried to pull her hand away, but I held on tight. "Don't say any more, Ethan. You don't need to feel guilty. Just divorce me. Be free. I'm not worth you sacrificing everything," she said, her voice choked, trying to push me away. "No!" I roared, pulling her into my arms. "I won't let you sacrifice like that anymore. I will never divorce you, Elara. We will fight this together. I will be by your side no matter what happens. I will find a way to cure your illness at all costs. I've talked to my grandfather. He's agreed to fully support your treatment financially. You don't have to pretend anymore." I told her about the confrontation with my grandfather, about the overwhelming regret that had gnawed at me. We stood in the crowded airport, people bustling by, but we were like in our own world, just the two of us. Elara finally collapsed, sobbing in my arms. It wasn't the cry of pain, but of liberation, of a burden lifted, of years of lonely struggle with illness and secrets finally exposed. "You're so foolish, Ethan," she whispered. "I thought I had to do it all alone. I thought you would hate me forever." We didn't fly to Switzerland that day. Instead, I took Elara home and we went together to see Dr. Elara Vance, Elara's neurologist. We explained everything to her about the contract and the secret clauses. Dr. Vance was incredibly surprised and touched by Elara's sacrifice and my change of heart. "This is a difficult case," Dr. Vance said, her eyes full of empathy. "But with Ethan's full financial support and Elara's perseverance, I believe we have a very good chance." A few days later, I took her to Switzerland. Elara began her treatment journey at a leading medical center in Switzerland. I stayed by her side every day. I put my work at Ascendant Tech on hold, only managing remotely. The gene therapy and physical therapy sessions were incredibly painful, but she fought fiercely. I watched her struggle with the pain, the horrible side effects like nausea, exhaustion, hair loss, and I promised myself that I would never let her fight alone again. I had changed. I was no longer the selfish man who only thought about property. I had learned what true love and sacrifice meant. After nearly a year of intensive treatment, Elara miraculously recovered. Her illness had significantly slowed down, and new nerve cells were gradually replacing the damaged parts. She still needed maintenance treatment and close monitoring, but she could lead a nearly normal life. She returned to her vaccine research now with unlimited financial support from me through a private fund I established independent of the Reed family. Her vaccine project made remarkable progress, bringing hope to millions of others with the same genetic disease. We still aren't divorced, and perhaps we never will be. The perfect marriage on paper, built on calculation and deceit, eventually transformed into a genuine love overcoming every challenge. I lost the massive inheritance my grandfather had promised because I didn't divorce as agreed and betrayed the contract, but I gained something infinitely more precious, Elara, and a true love. I found real freedom not in money or status, but in accepting and loving an extraordinary woman who taught me the meaning of sacrifice and selflessness. We often sit together gazing at the city lights from the balcony of our apartment, an apartment not as large or luxurious as the Reed mansion, but cozy and filled with love. I hold Elara's hand, feeling the warmth of her touch. I once thought love was a weakness, but now I know it's the greatest strength, capable of overcoming all calculations and even death. Our marriage began with a contract, but it ended with a heartfelt vow, a promise to be together forever, no matter how great life's storms may be. Ethan and Elara's story is a testament that sometimes from the falsest of beginnings, true love can blossom and overcome all prejudices. Is it true that love is only truly tested and proven when we are willing to give up everything for the one we love, even if that means losing honor or fortune? And would you be willing to sacrifice everything to protect the one you love, even if they misunderstand and resent you? What do you think of Ethan's final decision? Would you have done the same? And Elara, do you admire her silent sacrifice? Leave your comments below and share this story with your friends to ponder the limits of love, sacrifice, and life's unexpected twists. Hit the like button if this story touched your heart, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel so you don't miss our next emotional stories and surprising twists. Thanks for listening. See you in the next videos. Goodbye.